Great. Welcome, everyone. My name is Miranda Stiers. My pronouns are they, them, and I am joining from Nisenan Land in Sacramento.
And good morning, everyone. My name is Krista Colón. My pronouns are she, her, and I am joining today from Tongva Land down in Southern California.
I'm Christine Smith with obviously the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence. I'm on the policy team, and I'm also joining from Nisenan Land in Sacramento, and my pronouns are she and her.
Hi, my name is Nandini Ray, and I'm joining from Maitri. We are located in San Jose Bay Area, and my pronoun is she, her, hers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kimmy Remus with the partnership. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from Susquehannock Land, and that's in Baltimore.
Hi, everyone. I am Melody Crispodin. I use she, her, aya pronouns, and I am also with the partnership, calling in from Tongva Land in Los Angeles.
And Krista, I am going to turn it over to you for a time. Thank you. And just to let folks know, we do have ASL interpreters who are on the screen, and you can enable live transcript on the bottom of your screen.
Thank you so much, Miranda, and thank you to both of our interpreters for being here today. Thank you all for being with us for this conversation about the intersection of prevention work and policy advocacy work. We know that these are two very connected issues, and certainly here at the partnership, our policy team and our prevention team work very closely together. So we wanted to spend some time today talking to you all about the work that we do and some ways for preventionists to get involved in our policy advocacy, but also to have a broader discussion about the policy work you may already be doing through other state level or national level advocacy groups, as well as yourselves in your communities. So I think we can go to the next slide. And I know folks have been introducing themselves in the chat, so I want to encourage folks to continue to do that.
So I'm going to pin myself also. So my name is Christine Smith again. Please definitely introduce yourself in the chat. This is a pretty free-form presentation, so if you have questions throughout, and this will also include quite a bit of discussion. So it's our goal. If you haven't worked with the policy team before, it's me and Krista, so you are now meeting the entire policy team. So what we're going to cover today is an overview of how policy impacts prevention, a discussion on policy advocacy and how preventionists can get involved in legislative issues, information about my favorite event, which is Policy Advocacy Day, coming up soon on May 3rd, and a conversation about barriers that preventionists face in this area and how we can work together.
So we wanted to start by telling you a bit about the prevention-related policy work that we're doing. There's much more to our policy work, I will say, that is covering a whole range of issues, including economic justice, which of course has a prevention component, housing and homelessness, funding in addition to prevention funding, program requirements, immigration, family law, but we will not go deep into all of that. We will talk about some ways for you to get involved generally with our policy work so that you can hear more about all of those items. But for today's conversation, wanted to highlight some of the prevention specific policy work that we do. I think most of you are probably most familiar with this top bullet point of our budget advocacy work for prevention funding. This has been a big part of our work over the last 4 years now. We've been successful in getting prevention dollars in 3 of those 4 years, not counting our 2020 COVID impacted budget. But there's more work to do here. And so this is still a big priority for us because, as many of you know, the investments we've seen have been one-time only investments, right? And it's incredibly hard to plan any program, let alone a prevention program, when you don't know if funding will continue for beyond 1 or 2 years. So we are committed to and continued to work on getting dedicated prevention funding that is ongoing and stable for all of you. We've also worked in past years to try to pass a statewide requirement around DV prevention curriculum, right? So requiring healthy education, requiring healthy relationship education in our schools. We were unsuccessful in this when we tried it as its own legislation. And while we were thinking about bringing it back as its own bill, there happened to be legislation that started moving to strengthen California's sexual health education requirements. And the coalition working on the sex ed bill wanted to really make sure they were incorporating domestic violence and sexual assault and had a really intentional focus on healthy relationships and that education as part of sexual health education. So we supported that legislation and we're really glad to see that pass into law. And then following that, the California Department of Education underwent a process to update the framework that they put out around kindergarten through 12th grade health education. And this is the framework that guides all of the lessons for all of the health classes all through K through 12. And we saw this as a real exciting opportunity to infuse healthy relationship education in age-appropriate ways, really starting from kindergarten and building all the way through. And so we submitted comments at multiple rounds of opportunities for stakeholder input, continued to suggest ways that they could incorporate education about domestic violence and sexual assault, but most especially around prevention and what healthy relationships and consent look like. So that was a long process, but it is done. The new health education framework has been completed and should be starting to be implemented in schools. Now, of course, it takes a lot of time before the change that happens at the State Department of Education trickles down to your local school. So you may not be seeing these changes quite yet in the curriculum being presented, but hopefully that is coming soon. And if you are seeing changes, if you feel like there's better health education around these items in the schools you work in, I would love to know. It's always great to get that feedback about whether or not the pieces we try to add in have any impact and actually make it into the classrooms. We also do a lot every year, it feels, to support CalWORKs and CalFresh bills, so our social safety net, as well as key childcare budget asks last year and likely this year as well. Christine is actually taking the lead on a couple of CalWORKs bills for us this year. And I include these here because we know that when we can strengthen the economic stability of families so we can help reduce the likelihood of violence occurring. And so these pieces around affordability of childcare, cash assistance, food assistance for families can have really fundamental impacts to help support vulnerable families. So we don't always talk about these as prevention. These always fall into our economic justice bucket of work, but we certainly internally recognize the value when it comes to our prevention work as well. And then we also do a lot of work on paid family leave, paid sick days, and other types of economic supports for families. We work really closely with a coalition called the California Work and Family Coalition, which works on the topics you'd expect with a name like theirs. So lots of things around how to make the workplaces a better environment for people with families. So work on paid leave, paid time off, and other workplace supports. And this similarly is both an economic justice issue to us, but also one that we know has preventative impacts as well. And while we're working on it from the policy lens through myself and Christine, the prevention team has been working for several years around implementation and has done a lot for multiple years around paid family leave awareness, making sure that families know that this exists, making sure that it's more accessible to families so that more families can take the time off they need at times when they're welcoming a new child into the family, caring for themselves or a loved one through a serious illness. Those moments of stress in families where unfortunately we often see violence begin to occur, but that with economic supports, we can reduce that likelihood. So these are just a few examples. Christine, I want to give you space to chime in if there's anything else coming to mind for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think having worked with Miranda for several years, especially, like, all policy is prevention. And if it's not, why not? Right? Like, if we can smooth the system, if we can prevent evictions, that is preventing domestic violence. Like, if we can make survivors safer, if we can make it sure that they have food, that they have healthcare, that they can take time off from work. You know, I think a lot of those things like lend themselves really easily to the prevention mindset, which is that we need to prevent future violence. If people have enough food, if people have enough healthcare. I'm doing a lot around the family court system right now, and there's a lot to say that, you know, if you're able to make that system better, you're able to prevent future violence. Krista is doing a great economic coercion bill, and that came up on one of my earlier calls, because if you're able to support survivors that are undergoing financial abuse, which is something like 99% of survivors, you're preventing domestic violence. And I'm sure she can speak much more eloquently than I can, but you know, the person that I was talking to was like, yeah, that happened to me. And it was about a completely different other issue. I was overviewing the bills that we're working on. So I think all of our policy work is great, but I do think all of our policy work really aims to get at that intersection. So I am doing more work in CalWorks this year, and it's been a great, also some more in housing.
Yeah. And thank you, Christine. I think that's a helpful reminder and framing that some of the examples I put up on this screen are really primary prevention focused and have a strong primary prevention focus, but we certainly think about the work that we do across things like family law and debt relief for survivors as not only intervention response, but of course, blending into secondary and tertiary prevention responses. So it's a helpful reminder for me when I talk about prevention to be clear about whether I'm talking about primary prevention or primary, secondary, and tertiary.
Trying to lean on my BCT knowledge.
Yes.
Are we, okay, I think I'm gonna move on to the next slide if that works. How to get involved in policy work? There's so many ways. First of all, we have our monthly policy roundup webinars every Thursday, the first Thursday of the month from 12 to 1. So please join us. Our next call is actually tomorrow. Apparently it's early April already. So we have in-depth conversations about federal and state budget items, opportunities for discussion. You don't have to be a lawyer to engage in policy work. I think that's kind of a misnomer. You can be anybody you want and talk about policy work and what's really impacting you in your communities. We welcome everyone. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of see a lot of the different areas that we're working in. We have a lot of bill discussions there and also a lot of conversation on what's coming up. Policy moves pretty quickly. So we're in a fun time of year right now where a lot of bills are being discussed. Participate in your local or in your regional meetings. There are 7 regions. I encourage you to join the regional meeting of your area. We have policy updates on every single one. You could hear me talk even more than you already are right now. I present all the policy updates. So that's a great space to also do some networking with folks in your region, hear about the other things that are happening. And there's also updates from our capacity building department and then our prevention department also. So we now have prevention staff on all those calls. So it's a great space. Every region is a little bit different, but I really do think that you can kind of make it what you want it to be, especially for networking and discussion. Reading our weekly policy alert. We have a weekly newsletter. It comes out pretty much every single Monday, sometimes Tuesdays, but mostly Mondays. It contains great information, upcoming webinars, a lot of our policy updates. So this week it included that one of our priority bills, SB 914, made it through committee unanimously, I think, Krista, right? So we did like a big clip art of happy hands with hearts. Do you want to speak to that bill, Krista?
Sure, I can give just a quick update. So that bill is SB 914 with Senator Rubio, and that bill is focused on improving how our homelessness system responds to survivors and unaccompanied women who are experiencing homelessness. So it is a bill we're really excited about. We know that the housing and homelessness side, there's lots of challenges with getting our homelessness system to recognize domestic violence programs and domestic violence survivors as part of that, that experience of homelessness. So we're very excited about that. It's made it through one policy committee. This one has another policy committee to go. So we are working on that. And thank you to Miranda for putting all the links in the chat. You know, we do have a discussion question here that I know we'll get to, but actually want to just take a second and pause and ask, you know, if folks have been able to join policy roundups or if you are joining your regional meetings. And if so, you know, what keeps you coming to those? And if not, what might be some of the barriers to participating in those? So folks want to put it in chat, but also feel free to come off mute and just talk. Sarah, I saw you unmute. Did you want to share?
Oh, no, sorry. Accident.
I know Sarah participates in all of her Bay Area regional calls because she has been a board
Yes.
member and helps facilitate those regional calls.
Yes, we appreciate Christine's updates during the regional meetings. I think it helps when folks can send staff to our regional meetings who are able to, you know, keep up with all the emails. I think it really helps, you know, before becoming the regional member and board member. I was assigned that responsibility as staff member to just kind of keep up to date with the policy. I think it helps because sometimes, you know, there's so many updates and things happening all the time. I know it's hard to keep up, even as board member and regional representative. I'm still bugging Krista and Christine all the time to get the latest updates. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you all synthesizing information. That is a lot. So we appreciate you.
Thanks. Sometimes it's hard for us to keep up, so we understand when it gets confusing for others. Has anyone else been able to join in your regional meetings or the policy roundup webinars? And if not, that's okay. If you have any feedback about what might be keeping you from those meetings, we would always love to hear it. And Miranda also hopefully puts their contact information into the chat. So if you're not sure of which region you're in, or want some details about when your region meets and what those meetings look like, Miranda's offered up to be a contact for that. Thank you, Miranda. Christine, did you want to finish out this slide?
Yeah, I just want to highlight that we're going to have a quarterly policy report coming up soon. You can also get involved in other organizations too. We're not the only game in town, but we're the most fun. I'm just kidding. Other organizations, advocacy organizations are doing great work, addressing relevant issues, school climate and policies, anti-racism, anti-homophobia. There's a lot of opportunities to get involved in different kinds of policy work. So we're going to talk about Policy Advocacy Day in just a second, but that is also a great opportunity to get involved in policy work. So I'm going to do this really quick, and then we're going to ask some questions, some discussion questions. Virtual Advocacy Day, Virtual Policy Advocacy Day, best day of the year. Yes, the presentation can be shared with you. It is not a whole lot longer. We kept our slides short. So Policy Advocacy Day is an awesome opportunity. Join us, come talk to your legislators. This is a meeting where we all meet with different legislators all day long. Last year, there were 100 meetings with 200 advocates. So we will spend time with you all day. Go to small 30-minute meetings. Depending on what part of the state you're in, you'll have more or less meetings, but the effectiveness is huge. Last year, we ended up with $115 million in funding after Policy Advocacy Day in the state budget. So that was not previously included in the budget. So I think that is critical. I think we make a difference when you talk to your legislators. You remind them that you are the ones electing them. You are the ones they are representing, and they need to listen to you. So please let us know if you've been able to attend in past years. Adriana, this is an awesome opportunity for you to rework your policy muscles at Policy Advocacy Day 2022. It is free to members. I'm glad to hear youth are loving it. They make a huge difference. People talk to us later and tell us like what great meetings they had with you, like how impactful your youth were. It's amazing. I'm excited that youth have come before. I would encourage you to bring youth again. I know Haven and I are in conversation about how we can schedule meetings since they're now back in school and so they can participate. Everything is online, so it makes it a little easier. You don't have to travel to Sacramento, wherever you are. So I think that hopefully makes it a little bit easier for you. We will also have a Policy Advocacy Day prep webinar. So if you're thinking, I've never done a legislative meeting, I've never talked to people, there are people just like you, and you're going to have great talking points and great resources to talk about the bills that we're talking about. But ultimately, you're preventionists. and you know the issues that are important to your community. So you can talk to people directly about them. And Melody has been a frequent attendee of our Policy Advocacy Day until we hired her, and now she gets to attend again. So please, yeah, let us know if you've attended a prior Policy Advocacy Day or if you're already registered for this year's.
And as Christine said, last year after Policy Advocacy Day, the state budget included $115 million for the field. 100 million of that was to backfill the Victims of Crime Act and the cuts we were seeing at the federal level. And then, as Miranda mentioned, 15 million of that was for domestic and sexual violence prevention. And that created the SD program current round of funding. So we'll have at least 45 new programs starting May 1st with 2 years of funding, because we were able to get enough money in the budget that Cal OES decided to do 2-year funding rounds. So we're excited for that. Elise, I'm so glad you've brought youth in the past and are planning to again. The Avanti is registered. Melody, you've done 10 plus, you're ahead of me. But I'm glad you keep coming back every year. And Helona, you're registered for your first time. That's wonderful. We are excited to have you. And Sarah, I know you're working on putting together a really great team of folks. Thank you for that. Great. I love seeing so many folks coming, and so many folks coming for the first time. I think every year we do the event, there's a great mix of folks who've been, 10 plus times, like Melody. We should start giving out prizes, Melody. And people who are coming for the very first time. So don't feel intimidated if it's your first time. We will make it as easy as we can for you. And one of the nice perks of the fact that we're doing it virtually again, that there's no confusing building layout to get lost in. You don't have to wear fancy shoes that will hurt by the end of the day. So hopefully it'll be a positive experience. It is Christine's favorite day of the year in our work calendar by far. Christine, anything else you want to say about Policy Day and what folks should know?
It's great. I'm super excited for all of those who it's your first year. We're going to have a great opportunity. So Policy Advocacy Day prep sessions are on April 21st and 28th. So that information is on the website. I feel like the first one is in the morning from 10 to 11:30, and the second one is from 1 to 2:30. So props to Christina for me actually remembering that, since we've been working together really closely on the website and getting everything together. So that's April 21st and 28th. It will also be recorded. So if you are busy, you can listen to the recording, which I think is a great opportunity, especially for youth who may not be able to attend those. And we'll also share the slides for those. So super excited. Again, we're going to have a great panel, lots of conversation to kick off the day. And then you'll have some time to meet with your teams to make sure that you're comfortable. And every group will have a partnership staff member with you. So someone will be there to facilitate and make sure, you don't get so excited that you're still talking to them 3 hours later, and that your meetings stay timely. And also that you get breaks, because we know being on Zoom is a lot. So we'll make sure to do what we can for you. And we'll pass the candy next year sometime when we're in person. We'll try and do that again. Anything else, Krista?
Just to say that the registration deadline is coming up. Registration is free this year for everyone. And if you want to check in with your team and your staff to see who else from your organization might be coming. Also, one of the top items we will be talking about in all of our legislative meetings, or more accurately, that you'll be talking about in all of your legislative meetings, is the request for ongoing prevention funding. So it is directly applicable to the work that you all do to be able to participate and speak about that prevention funding. For those of you who are among the new SD grantees that are starting soon, it's a great opportunity to talk about how much the state funding means for your programs. For those of you who've gotten funding in some of the past years of the state's investment and seen that money be for 1 year and then go away and saw how tricky that was to navigate, it's a great chance to talk about that and the importance of that money being ongoing and stable and reliable. And for those of you whose organization has never been able to receive state funding for this work because there hasn't been enough of it to go around and it hasn't been consistent, this is a great time to also talk about that. And as Miranda shared in chat, there are also the new FD grants. So a small group of grantees there that have been announced. I saw the question in chat. I think there was a question about whether or not the new SD awardees have been named yet. And I don't think it's been announced yet, but Miranda, you might know more than I do if awards have been officially announced for the new 45-ish grantees.
Yeah, we have been in close contact with Cal OES, and this is the California Office of Emergency Service. I tend to go into acronyms a lot, so I'm trying not to. They are working on it. All of the it's all up at the executive level at this stage, and they plan to have those announcements out in the next couple of weeks. So we are anxiously waiting the announcement, just like everyone else, and good luck to everyone who applied. I know they had over 160 applications or 130 applications, which is phenomenal. So we really look forward to learning who those programs are and then providing technical assistance and training and collaboration with Valor and the California Department of Public Health.
Thanks, Miranda. Thanks for the update. It's amazing how many applications came in and really speaks to the immense need. I know all of you who have applied are waiting on pins and needles to find out if you are funded for the sake of your programs and the amazing work you'll do in your organization. I very strategically am just on pins and needles hoping that Cal OES will announce this before our big advocacy day so that we can share that news with all of the legislators at Advocacy Day and before the next big budget moments happen. So hopefully all of that will come together, but of course we're most excited about the announcements getting out and the money getting out to the new grantees to support the work in community. Okay. Christine, did you want to kick off some discussion?
Yeah, that sounds fun. So I know you've seen the discussion questions. I'm actually going to stop sharing so we actually have more of a conversation and less of a PowerPoint slide. So I think we're trying to get information and we're trying to have a conversation, but what are some of the barriers that you face with getting involved in policy work at the local or the state level?
It's Sarah again. I'll just add, sorry, I'm like eating while I'm listening to y'all. I'll just add, I think one of the barriers, like I was saying earlier, is especially for staff or advocate staff who are like working with clients directly, they're often the ones that know the most, that they just have so much on their plate, you know, especially for like our housing coordinator who knows a lot about the housing challenges. They all just always have so much on their plate, and it's hard to carve out the time. And I think to combat that, one of the things that used to work well, again, like I was saying before, having like a designated staff person who, which I know is hard to do, you know, like a lot of us are underfunded in our agencies, and it's hard to find the time to do anything extra. But one of the things I think that used to work well was quarterly, I would try to go, my role is like to support grants, and quarterly I would go to the advocates meeting, and I would bring the list of bills, the bill chart that the partnership puts together, and I would go over the bills with the staff advocates, and I would like tell them like where the partnership stands, like the bills where there was no stance yet. I would just share the key highlights with them and get some like key bullet point feedback from them, and I would send it to partnership staff. And that was really fun to do as well, just to like be able to translate, you know, a lot of policy jargon and legislation to advocates who really are affected so immediately by a lot of, like, I know, for example, like one of the hot topics is always like restraining order, and anything having to do with restraining orders is always top of mind for advocate staff and case managers and stuff like that. So that's just to add a little bit more to what I was saying earlier. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. That's really helpful. And I see Adriana chimed in chat. One of the barriers is a lack of knowledge around the local political process. And then for the organization, they don't have a policy department or anyone really responsible for that. So it's a barrier when you're trying to step in. I think, Adriana, that challenge, well, both challenges, but the challenge of not having a dedicated prevention department is probably pretty common. Does anyone on the call, do you all have a dedicated prevention, or sorry, a dedicated policy team at your office? Seeing some head shaking, see Sheridan chiming in about the same challenges. Yeah. So you are not alone in that challenge. And it's hard. I think a lot of times at the local level, the policy work ends up getting held at the executive director level, if they're involved at all. And for us, you know, of course, executive directors are very important. We always want to know what they're thinking. But when it comes to prevention policy, you all are the experts. Just as what Sarah was saying about having housing staff involved when they're talking about housing bills, right? That so many of you in different roles at your organizations hold different areas of expertise or different experience, right? Your crisis advocates in the legal department are the ones in court with survivors every day. So they're going to have a very different experience of what family court needs there are than anyone else might have. And so we always really want to be able to hear from folks who hold all those different experiences. Christine, do you want to talk at all about some of those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to, this kind of makes me think of the partnership policy agenda process, which we're going to be starting later this year. So we do have a survey so people can kind of identify challenges that they're having. You don't have to be a policy expert to do that. I'd encourage you to just share it widely and kind of hear about, so we can hear about some of the challenges that you're facing, you know, so we can kind of reflect that. And then we'll also have a survivor survey again this year. So survivors can tell us kind of about the barriers that they're experiencing. Specific to a policy department, it's challenging. And I definitely encourage you to reach out to me as a resource or to Krista as a resource if there are questions. You know, I can't help you with local politics because I can't be everywhere, but I certainly do know a bit about what's happening at the state. So if you do have questions or want to do some learning, you feel free to reach out. I also know that time is an issue. So you may not have time to do that. So please let us know like what resources that you would need to be able to engage in policy. So we do have some Policy 101 webinars on our website, on our MemberClick side, that kind of walk through the state legislative process, which, I think in this call, when we talk about like first house, second house, like first committee, second committee, Krista and I know very much what we're talking about, but like it's basically what we mean by that is it's early in the process. That it's a great step, that it's a little bit early because the legislative session in California is pretty long. Like we have 5 months more left of it. So to kind of help at least break down some of that jargon, we have those resources on our website. And if you ever have any questions, Sarah called me today earlier. Great, awesome, happy to walk you through our bills and like what we're talking about at Policy Advocacy Day. But I'm also really interested in like what tools would support you, like for folks who don't have a policy department or folks who are trying to get more involved in policy. Like, what do you need in order to feel supported in that area? Like, nobody has to be an expert. Certainly we're here to support you, but to feel like you're not as confused or as muddled if you don't want to be muddled.
The other thing I'll say when it comes to policy work, I think is true at every level, right? Whether we're talking federal policy, state policy, or local policy, is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? You don't have to work on everything happening policy-wise. You don't have to be at every meeting. You don't have to be the one leading every effort. And also that you're never alone or rarely alone in the policy work you're doing. There are always partners. And so part of why we encourage you to join our calls and also to join other organization calls, right? Other organizations email lists that are working on issues that intersect with the needs of your community is because they'll do a lot of the heavy lifting for you and hopefully make it pretty easy for you to get involved and for you to share your voice and share your perspective in their work. So the policy work can feel super overwhelming. Sometimes it feels a bit like learning another language when you already have to speak prevention public health language, right? It can be a whole new language and whole new processes. But allies and partners can help make that easier. And Melody, I wanted to make some space for you because you've spent a lot of time in your work in LA navigating local policy change. See if you wanted to share about that.
Yeah, I think that I would just reiterate that a lot of what you can do at the state level, you can kind of mimic at the local level. So you can work with your county board of supervisors, you can work with your city council members, you can even work with your local school districts, school boards, all to get access and to try and move our agendas forward. And just like Krista was saying right now, I think one way in is finding partners who already have relationships with those folks, but also just cold calling is another option, right? To try and see if you can get meetings with them and get on the agendas. I know that probably a lot of you do this when it comes to Domestic Violence Awareness Month, where your city councils or your county board of supervisors will proclaim Domestic Violence Awareness Month in your city or county. And so use those relationships that you already have to try and introduce more of our agenda items and more of the things that we are concerned about, like prevention and public health.
Thanks, Melody. And those look, oh, go ahead, Christine.
I also wanted to do a quick plug for SPI, for the Women's Foundation of California Public Policy Institute. Melody attended it and I'm attending it right now, but like if you do want to take a head headfirst dive into policy, that's a great program that we'll also advertise, but it's through the Women's Foundation. So you get paired with team members and work on a bill directly. So I know that that's been an opportunity for a lot of our members to kind of learn, have one person learn, and then share that pretty intense knowledge with others. So Krista used to be a mentor for the project as well.
And I will also give a plug that in addition to their state level program, which focuses on the state legislature, they also do local advocacy and local advocacy training. They're currently in the application process for this year's local fellowship. So there's information on their website at the link I provided. But that way, it's a way to really focus in on, you know, a team, putting together a team in your local community to work on these issues. And there is very much space for domestic and sexual violence prevention in those conversations. The team at both the local and the state level is called the Trauma Services and Prevention Team, I think. And so that encompasses domestic and sexual violence, but also a range of other issues of trauma that you might want to work on as well.
That is our team. And we also have a preventionist that's in this year's class who's actually on the reproductive health team.
Yeah.
So pretty exciting. So the other question I wanted to get to is kind of related. How can we work together to overcome existing barriers around policy work? Sheridan, super excited that you're going to be joining our calls. I think something, Helona, I think, sorry if I misstated your name.
It's Halana, thank you. I just wanted to share that I'm so new with my position, that I'm just spending up most of my time trying to learn. So that would be my barrier to getting more involved, but I am signed up for Policy Advocacy Day, as I noted, and joining these meetings. So thank you so much for all of the learning opportunities. I also wanted to say that I did watch Christine's videos, you know, on how a bill becomes a law and something else. There were two of them. They were so good. I may need to watch them again because, you know, I think it'll take time for that knowledge to stick, you know, learn by doing. And I can, so I just think it's going to take time for me, but thank you. And I don't know the answer to the next question that you asked, but thank you again.
Thank you. I'm super glad that someone watched the videos and got something out of it. And I knew you were strong-hearted also. So tribal policy sometimes looks different because the tribes are doing so much work at the federal level. And I'm always happy to, if you learn something from the video and want to talk it out or want to have a call, I'm certainly happy to have those conversations with you also. So I'm Rincon, and then I also used to work in some of the Indian country spaces. So I do have a tiny bit of that
Thank you so much for that. I come from an ICWA, an Indian child welfare background. So I'm really new to the domestic violence and sexual assault field. So that's another reason why I just do a lot of listening at all of the meetings so far. But great. I will reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's great work. ICWA is so important.
Vanessa, I saw that you had your hand up, and so if you do still want to chime in, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Vanessa Teran, pronouns they, them with the Mixteco Indígena Community Organizing Project. I just think that the question is at hand really just shows that there's a lot of people already here who have, you know, the direct organizing and service experience to move the policy forward. So I think that's I'm very new to coming into, you know, this space at least, but my cup's been involved through other teammates of mine. But just simply you having that first Thursday of the month, something like that, I missed it. Gatherings, going through an agenda where you're reviewing all the policies and where we're at moving it forward for key areas of mental health and DV. Because as you said, you know, some of the policy bills are also not only between this network, but between other coalition networks and CBOs moving that policy forward as well. And so I think it really just starts with having us together move forward collectively through those, you know, overviews, high level overviews on once a month, and seeing what steps we take collectively and everybody here would arrive potentially to the best of their ability, right? With letters of support, with testimonies, with, you know, feedback for the language on the bills, amendments, et cetera, social media, communications, leverage. So there's a lot of pieces as we move through policy collectively. And so, and it's also a learning experience, as somebody was just mentioning that, you know, for some of us, we're baby policy folks. I just finished my fellowship as well for the Solis Policy Institute. What is it? This fall, last winter / fall. And that was one of the biggest life experience I've ever had. And I actually was going through a lot during that time. I had a family member who we lost to COVID, and I was going through some major life transitions, and it was a very difficult time. And I considered, you know, telling that institute that I want to, you know, become kind of like a high school dropout, basically like a dropout of fellowship. And they're like, we're so glad you didn't, you know, we're so glad you stuck it through. But I was going what felt through the worst, you know, through their circumstances that are like so hard to explain through words about what we've been living through to the last 2 years, the demands of us producing work and labor as, especially as women, as gender nonconforming individuals, a lot of the labor is on us. And so I think that there's a lot to say and a lot to move forward with. And yeah, and it's just baby steps also, like letting people arrive as best as they can. Some people can arrive like with a whole, sometimes when I drink coffee, I'm like, I got all the energy in the world. And sometimes I just don't. And I know the answers, or the actions, but I just don't have that. And I think we all have to take it a little bit slower on ourselves, that, you know, we're going to all do the very best that we can and show up the best. And so just want to reaffirm that and appreciate all of you for your work as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Vanessa. Some days I feel like my coffee is the coffee I need, and other days I feel like someone snuck in and swapped out my caffeinated beans with decaf because it just is not doing the trick. But we know you all have so much on your plates, and would, even if there was not a pandemic, that we are continuing to live through and navigate through in terms of what it means for ourselves, our communities, our access to schools and partners. And so however you all show up in your local communities or with us here at the partnership for state level policy work is deeply appreciated and very valued. And we are here, as Christina said, to make it easy as we can and as demystified of a process as possible. So we'll make sure that you have our contact information in the chat as we wrap up. I know that we're coming up on 2 o'clock and I want to be mindful of time. So Christine, want to turn it over to you in case there's any sort of closeout you'd like to share.
Thank you all for joining us. It's been a great hour of discussion, and I hope you consider us a resource moving forward. So definitely look forward to everyone attending Policy Advocacy Day and doing all of your incredible work in the future. Can't wait to hear about it.
And Miranda, Melody, and Kimmy, thank you for making this space for us. I think it's the second time in recent months that we've done a bit of a policy takeover of a Prevention Peer Network space, and really appreciate the collaboration and the partnership on making that happen. So don't know if you all want to close us out at all, Miranda?
Sure. I know we can be cheesy sometimes, and I just wanted to say we're stronger together, and that collaboration is so important. And I know that's like so much of our tagline, but thank you so much for coming in. And I really encourage folks, if you have anxieties about Policy Advocacy Day, like, oh, I don't want to talk to legislators, you would never be alone. You will be in a group of people, you will have partnership staff there. And having done it, working in a local program and coming up and having all kinds of anxieties and everything else, the partnership did a great job of really prepping us and making sure we knew what our talking points were and kind of how to navigate some of the challenging conversations. And I had some misgivings with one of the folks that we went in to talk to, because I was like, oh, this person's politics are so vastly different than my own. But we had a phenomenal conversation, and they actually supported the work that we were doing. So it was a great learning experience too, of our own biases that we may walk into those meetings with. So encourage folks to join, and thank you so much, Kimmy, for putting that link up. And then Kimmy and Melody, if you have anything to share, then I want to give some space too.
No, just thank you to everybody for being here and recognizing this intersection. It's so important. And I hope to see all of y'all at Policy Advocacy Day.
Same here. I put kind of in the chat my thoughts and feelings. I'm going to butcher whatever quote that Christine said in the beginning that was originally from Miranda about preventionist policy should be preventionist, and if it's not, why isn't it? And be on the lookout also for our prevention newsletter. We have a lot of exciting things coming up. So thank you. Oh yes, and Miranda said thank you for our ASL interpreters.
Thank you so much for the ASL interpreters again. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.